So the big takeaway, and I quote, prices move because people do things independently of fundamental value.
It's true.
Yeah. But you need a 120-page paper in economics to get to yeah.
This podcast contains the arguably witty banter of two friends, Skippy and Doogles, that like to debate about investing. The content is intended to be entertaining and for informational purposes only, not investment advice. You should do your own research and consult a financial professional before using any of the information in this podcast, and especially before investing.
Whoa.
You look so happy.
I'm always happy. This is my happy face. It's my Roy Kent happy face.
You look tired, man.
Do I?
Yeah.
I got like 5 hours of sleep. I got up at like 3:45 and I was like, I guess it's time. Like I don't know. I don't know what else to do with myself.
That's just not good, man. Don't do that. I know what to do. Go back to bed.
You always have thoughts.
Do I ever?
Buy companies with limited downside. Get sleep.
What,
it's like all these like
I know, really controversial.
Oh man. How are you?
You know that people marry people with similar IQs? It's like a proven thing. If you're dumb, you marry someone dumb. If you're smart, you marry someone smart.
Okay, first of all, like there's so much to do with that. Like it would make sense to me that within a given range, that is likely true. It also makes sense to me that the majority of people are within given ranges.
Oh, you're just saying everyone's average, so it works out?
No, I'm just saying it has to be a range to be true.
There's only like the exact same IQ point.
Okay, that's not true. Like that, actually, that is not true.
Yeah, I did hear that this week. I thought it was pretty interesting. I also heard that genetics drives everything, and as parents, there's like no reason to parent. So that's my new philosophy.
You started this whole thing off with fantastic advice. Get sleep. Now you're just like spewing.
No,
that was like some kind of.
Do you know they can predict kids' achievement by looking at their DNA? Achievement in school?
No, they can't.
Yeah, they can. Boom. Done.
No.
Argument won. See you later.
No, that is. So you're telling what you're telling me is you're going to take apart the country in which they're born, the circumstance and economics in which they're born, like all of that, and just look at your DNA and be able to tell what you're achieving in school. You can't even look at someone's DNA and tell whether or not they're going to go to school, like let alone whether or not they will do well in school.
Yeah, well, so this kid's going to fall off a cliff at age 4, so he's never going to achieve. So what's his DNA tell you, right?
No, I guess you could make it into a self-fulfilling prophecy. You could just say, my kid's not going to do anything, so I'm not even going to send him to school. Like, there's no point. So I like that.
I might send you an interesting podcast. I'm not claiming that any of it is this black and white, but genetics appear to drive a lot of the natural tendencies and aptitude that come with maybe even the majority of life's things, and that's super interesting to me.
Where I would probably agree, non-scientifically, is that genetics drives ceiling. However, there's a lot that influences how close you can get to your ceiling, like how much you can achieve of your capability based on your circumstances and the systems in the environment in which you operate.
You know, I feel really blessed that you gave me that breakdown since you're a doctor who studied genetics.
No, because I'm not taking this from the genetics lens, because I'm taking the opposite lens. It's saying that you could have the best genetics in the world, and if you were born in Rwanda in the middle of genocide, like it's actually not going to dictate your life achievement. Like that's what I'm saying. But your genetics might say, if you had the right advisors and mentors, the right systems, if you were born in the right circumstances, this is what you could achieve. But genetics can't say what you will achieve. Like that's my broader.
No, nothing can say what you will achieve. That's predicting the future. I mean, yeah, of course.
But that's what you just said like a second ago. You made me get high decibels up in here.
Can I give a special shout out to our content producer who's just been nailing things, man? This week, big stories, inflation, Kyrie, what else? We nailed it all. The content producer is just amazing on the show.
Earning every dollar. Exactly. All right. Can we start this thing off on a happy note? For once in my life, can I start off on a happy note?
Yeah, but happy to you is like a 99-page research paper that no one else even reads.
No. You are stereotyping me. I feel like, and like you're pigeonholing me. No, I'm going to start off talking about debt.
Okay. Isn't like paying off debt the happy side of things?
Happy is as happy does, right? There was this tweet that I saw early this morning. It just made me crack up, and so that's the happy part of it. The other part of it is, I mean, maybe not so happy because that cannot be happy. But basically, I'll get to the tweet last so that we can end with the bucket of joy. We have discussed here that there's debt everywhere. Corporations are in debt. The government's in debt. Americans, the American citizens are in debt. There's $14.88 trillion in consumer debt, if people didn't know. Quick quiz. Which generation has the most debt per capita right now?
What's like the folks in their 50s right now? Is that Gen X? I'm gonna go Gen X.
Gen X. Yeah. Gen X. $140,000 in debt. A little bit over $140,000 in debt. Gen X. So we're in a heck of a lot of debt. Here's the tweet though that I saw. So Paul Graham sent this out. He was a co-founder of Y Combinator. Paul Graham.
Paul G, my boy. Yeah.
There you go. The tweet says, and it's a quote, "It's just like real life. You have crushing debt you can never repay." End quote. Guess who said it?
You have crushing debt you can never repay? Is the quote? Yeah. I have no idea.
All right.
God? Jesus? Sorry.
The joy of this quote is that it was his 9-year-old talking about Animal Crossing. It's just like real life. You have crushing debt you can never repay. I read that. It's awesome.
And Paul G is a person that does not have crushing debt that he can never repay. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and guess after some of his equity payouts.
Yeah, one of the responses to it was, "Why don't you just repay it for him?"
Yeah, seriously. The other tweet, well, we're talking about tweets. I think I sent this your way. It said, "Hey, Dave Ramsey, are you still recommending that people pay down their mortgage when their mortgage is at 3% and current inflation is at 5%? It made me laugh. I haven't decided if I'm going to pick a fight with Dave Ramsey yet or not on the pod.
Just
because I've seen his tactics, man. He might kill me.
It's not worth it. You're going to have Dave/Gordon Ramsay on one side and China, like Xi,
I know, man,
is going to be on the other side.
Like living in Antarctica or wherever Snowden is, just because I had a few thoughts about finance. It's fun. I like that.
Yeah.
So let's talk listener mail, man. I think we got 2 great articles from listeners this week. I want to start with one that came in from Kyle, who's really my boy. Kyle and I go way back. He sent over this article in the New York Times. This is one of those guys, if you're on the fence about paying for journalism, like this article to me was worth the cost of subscription to the New York Times for like 3 months because it's just really well done. It's by Connor Daughtry, who's based out of the Bay Area. It's called Where the Suburbs End, about California real estate. Doogles, you can make it through this one.
I did. Spit on it.
So I know you used to live in California. I'm curious for your initial reactions before I dive into the facts.
All I can say is when the mention of the unaffordable housing crisis, right, came up a bunch. When I was in San Francisco specifically, we rented our 750 square foot 2-bedroom apartment, couldn't afford to buy that, and wouldn't have bought it if we could afford to buy it. Like that's kind of like the summary. And this was years ago. And so on the other side of the pandemic, or the other side of the crisis, right, that was hitting the pandemic, I'm not sure where things are, but that about sums it up.
No, and that's kind of the background, right? It's, in my experience, it's like really educated with it folks often get priced out of communities that just, it seems crazy. It seems like there's a crazy disconnect. I have family over there who used to live in San Francisco, ended up moving all the way to Fresno to get a house and a yard that they think is, I know, right? That's like a 3-hour drive for those who don't know.
You got to do what you got to do.
It's a totally different community, totally different place. And that's happening all over the place. So Governor Newsom has been working on this, I don't know, for this conversation, let's call it a housing crisis, right? And the way they chose to solve it, or attempt to solve it, is with ADUs, which are basically backyard units that you can throw in any suburban backyard and make another house out of it. And there's a lot of arguments for. Some of it is mother-in-law suite, or if the kids are ready to move out but they can't afford, to your point, they can't afford $1 million home because they're in their early 20s or whatever. So they signed a state bill, I think it's called SB 9. Is that right, Doogles? SB 9, that
Sounds
basically statewide makes it legal to put backyard units in all suburban homes. So they kind of overrode the city ordinances that used to make this extremely more challenging and went for it. The interesting thing about this, potentially on a positive side, this has paved the way for some 2.5 million new housing units, which is about 25 years of the state's supply at current building pace. So they went from saying we're going to have struggles with building new homes, and it might not be solvable for decades, to going, hey, within the next 3 years, we can easily build and install and permit 25 years worth of inventory.
Wow.
Now, what comes with this is all the dynamics of, well, my suburban home, I'm not in favor of that because it's going to change the dynamic. What about parking? What about infrastructure? What about everything else?
Yeah. And the personal, sorry to interrupt, but the personal stories they put in there around that, it was so well written. The way that really he weaved in the personal stories about the woman that like grew up in the house and now lives across the street and all that. It was really well written.
Yeah, I want to pull this quote. So, housing politics is nonpartisan. The term NIMBY, which is NIMBY, is short for not in my backyard, right? Can't you relate to that? It's like, oh, I understand that there's an affordability crisis or a housing crisis. And if people outside of my neighborhood want to solve this, by all means. But when the politics shows up in my neighbor's backyard, and that means I have more cars parked on my street, like it becomes I don't care if I'm red or blue. I don't like change.
Yeah, people are NIMBY all over the place, right? It's kind of like the people that are, I'm all for higher taxes on the wealthy, all that. But can you wait until after my after?
Yeah,
you just hold up on that?
I love that. NIMBY everywhere. So let me give you a few more facts, and then if this is interesting, we can continue the debate. If not, we'll move on, right? So he specifically details a neighborhood called Claremont Village outside of San Diego, built in the 50s, right? When this was built, the median income to afford the $82 monthly payment was the very definition of middle class. Like, this is as middle class as it gets, right? Plumbers to doctors to, it's a diverse neighborhood. Today, those same homes cost about $850,000, which is up 30% just in the past 2 years. And you would have to make about double the median income in San Diego to afford one of those homes. So same neighborhood, not particularly like nice or mansions. The definition of middle class when it was built has now gone to something that's double the definition of middle class to afford the payment. And a lot of that speaks to the housing shortage in my eyes and what it's done to housing prices in California. But you see this other places in the States, right?
There was one thing, this is not what the article's about, but it was something that was traveling through my head as I was reading about this, is that 1950s housing boom, so the post-World War II like housing boom effectively that happened in the US, which was a lot of government sponsorship that went behind it, created an enormous amount of wealth from like home equity for people, for homeowners in the country.
Yeah. Except
it was largely targeted for the like white population of the US. And so what was going through my head as I was reading this is, from the perspectives that were in this article, like I fully understand it. And then I was also thinking that there's this double, maybe triple, quadruple whammy, quintuple, because I just keep going up, sextuple whammy that happens, which is there were the folks that were left out of that initial boom. Plus now you have the housing crisis. For these folks, there's NIMBY. And then for these other folks that are like, can I have a backyard? Kihimby? I don't know if I can.
I can't.
Too much.
That's way too much, but it's funny. Okay, so then, yeah, I hear you, right? And that's in a way happening today in terms of if you're in a hot real estate market, you either have owned a home and you're riding that wave, or you haven't and you've just missed out. And it's terrible. And that's all associated to this supply crunch. Here's what's happening on the developer side that I think is interesting. Then we'll put a bow on this. So they profile a guy that's been flipping homes in this environment, right? So he buys a home in that neighborhood. He pays $700K. It's the estimate that the current rental he could pull from that is a little over $3,000, which basically pays the mortgage, right? What he's going to do is spend an additional $400K building new units and splitting the house so it's set up to rent. And then he's going to command somewhere between $9,000 and $10,000 a month in rent, which makes the property worth the equivalent of $1.7 million, obviously increasing the population density on that lot by 3 to 4 times. So he now has a very easy way to turn this suburban family home into almost a rental complex and make, I mean, you do the quick math there, he should be up $600K if his math is right here, even if he wants to sell the thing, because he buys a home and he sells a rental unit of 4 properties. And again, I see both sides in terms of how that's better for the community and how that would absolutely drive the neighbors insane.
This is not a simple problem. Like it's really complex. The supply, if you abstract everything out, the supply situation in California is absolutely real. And so, and I think what the government is basically saying is we're just focusing on that. Like that's a real thing. And there are going to be consequences from this, but we gotta settle that. But when you get down to the micro level, the neighborhood level, the NIMBY level, it feels real, right? Those emotions are legit and valid.
I mean, I found myself being able to follow the logic pretty clearly, which I think means, as much as this gives me some heartburn, I think it might be the right decision. If I'm going to put you on the spot, like, is this the right approach for the state?
I don't know enough detail about all the different like micro situations, but at the high level, we have to solve this supply issue. Like that.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. And this isn't necessarily all this right thing to do, but I'll say that there are many more people that have studied this, talked to economists, and looked at the different solutions. And what seemed like it could politically get through was this. And so if it solves the supply issue, I think we got to do it. And sorry for your nostalgia.
You should be sorry. All right. You want to talk shadow inflation, or you want to continue to live in California?
Let's do shadow inflation. I thought this was real. It's a nice little fishbowl topic there.
Yeah, so this was another just really well done piece of literature this week. Neil Irwin in the New York Times specifically talked about some of the challenges with how we measure inflation, and how even if the price doesn't go up, inflation can be happening right before your eyes. He specifically talks about like a restaurant that might not raise their prices, but might previously they'd have 5 waiters and waitresses, and now they have 3, and the level of service sucks. That's happened to me recently. Like I can relate to that.
We talked about it a few episodes back.
Yeah, right. I just thought this was so smart and like such a good point. And so even if, CPI numbers came out this week and everyone freaked out because it looks like inflation is humming around 5%, which is historically high based on the recent past. There's some specific numbers on some of the things driving those. So like gasoline's up 42% over the past year. Used cars are up 24%. Meat is up 10%. Electricity is up 5%. On it goes, right? But the fact that those numbers could very reasonably be understated based on other tactics that businesses are doing to reduce costs without necessarily raising prices was just a little bit of an aha moment for me. And I loved the way he broke this down.
Yeah, I also find this to be an interesting topic. One thing that I'll extend onto it is that the quality issue at its core is what makes inflation such a question, or one of the things that makes inflation such a question mark to begin with, right? It's when people are discussing this is the shadow inflation side saying that there is inflation that we're not even counting because of what you just described. There's the other side of it that says the way that we measure inflation with prices isn't right in the first place because you can't account for the increased standard of living that it provides, the better technology. I think what's mentioned in this article at one point is like software bugs have lessened, right? Things like that is where it's hard to measure inflation to begin with because you don't know what you're paying for. If you just look at the price, this gets to maybe I'm going to make an extension to value investing too. Shoot, if you just look at the price of the thing and measure the price change, what does that tell you, right? You have to look at what you're buying as well. Do you see what I did there?
Wow. Wow. Nice work. Just throwing some shade. Here's a chance to throw some shade.
But there, one of the things I'll pull from this is it mentions that the BLS, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, which generates the CPI, right, in inflation index, they don't incorporate quality adjustment on, it says 237 out of the 273 components that go into the index, which is the vast majority of services. Basically, you can just say if it's that percent, you just don't. Quality is not a
thing. It's funny because the breakdown from one of the experts interviewed here was that he was previously kind of screaming from the rooftops like it's understated because of the software bugs thing. He's like, you're still paying $100 a year for the Microsoft product, but the Microsoft product is so much better than when you were paying $100 for a year like 10 years ago. That was an interesting, again, just thought experiment. And now he's kind of flipped and said, now quality is eroding significantly, even if prices aren't rising, and it's understated, which is
exactly. We just can't measure inflation. Right? That's the takeaway. Yeah, I found this to be. I found it to be pretty interesting as well, because I hadn't thought about some of the items like some hotels not offering daily cleaning services anymore, like all that. But it touches on the daily. You see it, right? They're not fixing the windows in your Dollar Tree.
We have more listener mail, and it's also in California. How about you break this one down for us?
A lot of California listener mail, yeah. So this listener mail comes from Elliot, and it's talking about PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, which is the utility for the biggest utility in Northern California. Disclaimer: Doogles is a shareholder of PG&E, so disclaimer.
But disclaimer: Doogles is a heartless individual that wants former employees of PG&E to suffer. Is that what you just said?
Disclaimer: Doogles just lost a lot of respect for Skippy. So now we're done with the disclaimers. So a little bit of backstory as we go into this story. So PG&E went bankrupt, not for the first time either, but PG&E entered into bankruptcy. And then as they were figuring out in bankruptcy court how they can come out, one of the things they did was they got a guarantee from hedge funds as they were emerging out of bankruptcy. So they gave the hedge funds 169 million shares in the company in exchange for a promise from the hedge funds that they would buy more if no one else did.
Yep.
This is known as an equity backstop. I know you got feelings for the equity backstop, but this is known as an equity backstop. But what ended up happening is they emerge, right? The stock gets listed again, and the hedge funds didn't end up buying more. They didn't need to.
Yeah.
What's actually happened is the hedge funds have dumped 2/3 of their holdings since they've emerged. And so by itself, if you just take all that stuff, if that was the story, like generic company goes bankrupt, needs an equity backstop, comes back out, you can have your feelings on equity backstops, but like not necessarily a big deal. However, what's happened is like the painful part and the human part of this is that the settlement with the fire survivors for PG&E, they were also provided, right, a certain dollar figure. I can't remember what it was, but it was billions of dollars of PG&E stock. So they're provided, these 70,000 people were provided this. But the hedge fund sell-off has put downward pressure on PG&E shares, which has then made it so their shares aren't worth what they were promised in the settlement. So you have these fire survivors that are losing out.
Yeah, right. So the fire victims were given 480 million shares, and they were promised a price, which is interesting. Some of this I was curious about the legal representation for the fire victims because they made some poor decisions, I think. And so, yes, I think the article is written with that tilt, and that's not necessarily a bad tilt of like, look at these unforeseen consequences to the fire victims and how shameful is that? And I can get on board with that. But there's also this risk component that comes with bankruptcy and high finance that is just kind of realistic here. So I didn't end up walking away. I walked away feeling sorry for the fire victims, but not really feeling like the private equity firms have done anything wrong. So P&E is in a very difficult situation where they need to raise billions of dollars. They need to be guaranteed that billions of dollars are available to them to come out of bankruptcy. Their hands are tied, and that's why. I mean, I'll tell you, it's funny you all own the stock because I was looking at the stock for opportunities like this to see if there was ways to provide financing in a way that was almost a surefire bet, like a value investor philosophy. You'll see Seth Klarman's Bowpost Group is one of the largest private equity firms that jumped in. Well, they're not technically a private equity, but one of the largest financiers that ended up with this equity backstop because it was a no-brainer deal on their end. It was pretty simple to do the math and say the assets that PG&E has available will be worth some time with the right provisions to help reduce the risk for them. And that's exactly what they did.
It makes sense. I mean, I got into PG. PG&E is not some sort of long-term hold that I have by any means.
Yeah.
I got in near the end of last summer when I was looking at it. It was like in the high 8s.
Yep.
It had been driven down. And I just said, I want to hold this thing for approximately a year. When it gets to, I'll have a mental sell order, right? Because you can't have a sell order in a year, but of around $12 a share. Where else am I going to put my cash? Like that seems fine, right? Like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like my thesis. Things like this for PG&E, and there have also been other many things at PG&E over the years, right? Like I don't feel good owning PG&E stock, to be honest. It was just one of those things where I kind of looked at it and I was like, well, it looks like not quite a no-brainer where I got in, like not the no-brainer that the hedge funds had, but like a reasonable brainer. It's kind of where it's at.
A reasonable risk. Yeah. I mean, the hedge funds really got a no-brainer, and it's unfortunate that's impacting things. But if I had billions of dollars or even hundreds of millions of dollars, I would have signed up for this in a heartbeat. Like, this is the type of thing that you can do with $100 million that allows that $100 million to go quickly and isn't fair in our capitalistic society, but it's kind of the nature of how this works.
Unfortunate. Thank you for the listener mail for both pieces. Good conversation. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Can I dig into the fishbowl for a quick hit here?
Absolutely.
This is going to be a very quick hit, probably, unless you want to go deeper. But it's an article reading recommendation for the most part here, and it came out, or a blog post more than article. It's something that came out in January of 2021, but I just came across it this past week and thought it was interesting, so I'm going to recommend the read. The title is "Bitcoin is a Ponzi." It was written by Jorge Stolfi, and I'm just going to give it starts off with the definition of a Ponzi, and then the rest of the post goes into the arguments against the fact that it's a Ponzi, and I just think it's a worthwhile read. That's all. I'm on no side of this, but the way that the post defines a Ponzi says there are 5 parts to it. 1, people invest in it because they expect good profits, and 2, that expectation is sustained by such profits being paid to those who choose to cash out. However, number 3, there is no external source of revenue for those payoffs. Instead, number 4, the payoffs come entirely from new investment money, while number 5, the operators take away a large portion of this money. Those were the 5 pieces that were laid out here that said Bitcoin is a Ponzi. Google it. We'll put it on the Twitter as well. It's worth a read, just for academic amusement, if nothing else.
So, yeah, I think you're trying to get me fired up here.
I'm not. I was trying. I said quick. Just a reading recommendation.
No, well, there's no quick. Sorry. This is just more Doogles hate on crypto. I felt like this guy. I only skimmed the article because I was bored with it quickly. it's fascinating, but I felt like he tilted the definition of a Ponzi scheme. And then he had some selected facts. He the fun part is he goes through and says, well, by that definition, fiat currency is a Ponzi scheme. And then he says, no, it's created by the government, blah, blah, blah. So he tries to go through this list of frequently asked questions. But I think let's just talk about Bitcoin and nothing else. I think Bitcoin is doing what Bitcoin was established to do, and I don't see that as a Ponzi scheme. The reason transaction fees are high is because Bitcoin really emphasizes decentralization and safety, and you pay a price for those things, and that price is higher as the price rises, because as the price rises, there's more reward to stealing the thing. So, like,
So
I don't know.
I just want to be absolutely
Yeah.
clear. So you're saying something is not a Ponzi if it does what it was designed to do.
Are you trying to twist my words and say that I am saying Bitcoin was designed to be a Ponzi scheme and it's good at being a Ponzi scheme?
Let's dive into the fishbowl and go on. I heard what I heard.
All right, so then if you want to go down this road, I want to go to an article I just sent your way. I don't think I sent this to you previously. That talks specifically about the Afghanistan economy right now. High level here, and we probably only need to do high level. The Afghanistan economy is in shambles. I met with an executive of a payments company who earlier this week they're shutting off all payments to Afghanistan, not surprisingly. That means the US financial system effectively stops working. I mean, there's already been a ton of this that has happened, right? The economy just died. Getting money in and out of that country is crazy. So where did they turn, Doogles? Where did they turn?
Ponzi.
I mean, they don't have the proximity to the US that like El Salvador or some of those other countries had when they informally or formally adopted the US dollar as a currency when their country's currency struggled. The Afghanistan people have gone to cryptos and Bitcoin and others. And to me, I'm going to sound like, I don't know, a romantic or something. That's really freaking cool. This technology is providing a little bit of stability in terms of the trade of goods. I mean, this is a huge step forward for war-torn countries, in my opinion.
Skippy crypto bull. Yeah, I think that I tried to say when I brought up that post that I'm not on either side of this. I think that it's academically amusing. That's what I was saying. I think that cryptocurrencies can play a role for the purpose that you stated. I still think it's academically amusing.
You did not say academically amusing. Academically amusing is a different thing. I think it's academically amusing too. You were trying to throw some shade there, Doogles.
I'm always trying to throw shade. I mean, I will hide that shade behind euphemisms, but I'm always trying to throw shade. Yeah, this article, I just skimmed it very quickly here.
Yeah.
Is well worth a read.
It's awesome. So this is from I'll put it on the Twitter. So
yeah, the Thomas Reuters Foundation.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So in the previous regime in Afghanistan and currently, women and girls are heavily discriminated against, and in some cases not allowed to get an education, have jobs, etc., etc. In some cases, they're not allowed to receive payments, right? That all goes out the window with crypto. Like, so there's some examples here of long ago people switching to crypto to avoid that government scrutiny around paying women. It's just awesome. I really liked it.
Yeah.
It makes me smile, and there's not much to smile about in Afghanistan. I'm not claiming it's all roses, but it's one piece of the puzzle that hopefully makes life a little easier.
Yeah, thanks for sending this, and let's definitely put it out. I'm going to read it in more detail, but the quick skim, this is good stuff.
Cool. What else is in the fishbowl?
I enjoyed this Bloomberg Business Week article called "Does New Cash Make Stocks Go Up?" Now, what's behind this article is a 120-page economics paper that I have not gotten to. So I'm going to put that out there. But
Okay.
boy, gee willikers, I was so excited to get to this weekend. As you can imagine, anyone would be very excited about it. But I have not gotten to it yet. So I can only give some of the quick hits that come from the article. What is most fascinating to me is, so the core of this is basically that if you put new cash flows into the equities market, into the stock market, it will make prices go up, right? That's what they're saying.
Okay.
Prices going up based on demand is how markets work. I mean, like the oversimplification, right? And so what the thing that like gets me going, and the reason why I think economics is so fascinating, is because there are these seemingly like simple questions or statements that everyone would be like, obviously, but economics is so academic that you have these like simple statements that I'd be like, you buy stocks, they're probably going to go up. Like if more people bought the stock, it's probably going to go up. And you're going to go, well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And but you need 120 page paper because everybody else is going to be pushing back on what's going to come here. And they're going to be pushing back because of your boy, Eugene Fama, because you are a big fan,
Chicago
huge fan
school,
of the efficient market hypothesis. So Eugene Fama and others came up with the efficient market hypothesis, which is something that Skippy is he's not into the efficient market hypothesis. I was giving him a hard time. But basically what it says in the simplest terms is that market prices are always right because they're based on all the information that's available at the time, right? And so the markets are efficient. There's no arbitrage. You can't take advantage, ... Like that's kind of what it says. And so the big takeaway here is, and I quote, prices move because people do things independently of fundamental value.
It's true.
Yeah. But you need a 120 page paper in economics to get to, yeah. Right? Yeah, there was
I don't want to talk about the efficient market hypothesis right now. I mean, it's not, you like oversimplified. No one's claiming it's 100% efficient, but that is the argument for indexing. The faces you're making are so great.
Yeah, there was a graph in here in this article. It's a global flows into equity funds, and so it shows the like net inflow, net outflow, right? And the amount of cash that's going in or being taken out of global equity funds. And this year, 2021, is not comparable to any of the last, at least it went back 20 years, that they've showed. And so this year it's showing $750 billion, more or less, in net inflows. The closest before this year, according to this graph, is something like 300 billion in net inflows. And that was back in this roughly 2017, it looks like, and 2013, we're kind of like roughly around there. Otherwise, this year, so much. And so one of the things that came up in this article is that this year is academically fascinating because you had all the like the Reddit, retail trader like inflows. And so it's kind of like an ultimate, well, did that impact? Like, let's look at real info here. Like, did that impact the price in the markets? Right. And so that was kind of where the article started to go.
So this is how you make a bubble, right? We talked about China last week. I read some more on the China real estate bubble this week, and what drove that in a way was they made it's not illegal for Chinese citizens to invest outside of the country. It's hard for Chinese citizens to easily invest in equities, and it became a thing where real estate was like, if you had wealth in China, real estate was the investment for the last 15, 20 years. And the only thing that was making a decent returns, your saving account had low interest rate, everything else. So it was like, if I have a brain and I have a few $100K, I'm buying more real estate, and then I'm making a nice return on that. I'm going to buy more real estate. And the inflows in real estate made them so they could build a replica of Paris that no one lives in because the money was there, right? And I think that's happening in equities. I think that's happening in cryptos. I think that's happening in a lot of spaces right now. And the correction, whenever it comes, is going to be fascinating to watch. We'll get to talk more about your favorite topic, which is debt, Doogles. It'll be great.
Oh, I mean, it's just so happy. It just makes people happy. All right, what else you got in your fishbowl?
That's it, man.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, tell them how to get in touch with us.
Hit us up on Twitter at Skippy Doogles. Please give us a review on iTunes. We got some more reviews last week. We appreciate that. It helps more people find the show. And skippydoogles@gmail.com. Keep the listener mail coming. Pretty soon, we're going to have enough listener mail for a listener mail only show, Doogles. I'm excited about that.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Peace.